The oldest and most well known legends is actually a true story of a Hungarian countess from the 1500s named Erzabet Bathory. Quite often we use the term Elizabeth because that's the pronunciation of it in English, but technically it was Erzabet. Now, her brother was the king of Poland, and she was from one of the oldest noble houses in Hungary. They were well known to be an incestuous bunch, and they ended up, their bloodline so polluted or overly pure that they had many perverts, many murderers, and oddly enough, bishops in the church and cardinals and Satanists. And at the same time, they were one of the most aristocratic families in Hungary. So, at the age of 11, Erzabet's parents arranged for her marriage to Ferik Nadazde. He was also an aristocrat. He was a soldier, a soldier of fortune, basically, but he was a count. When Erzabet reached 15, they did get married. Okay, well, she didn't have a child for many years. And while he was off fighting wars, wherever he was fighting the current war at, she was busy having affairs with both male and female and slaves and just whoever she wanted. Erzabet was very well known to be beautiful. For back then, she was considered absolutely gorgeous. But she had a evil little streak in her. She would hire all of the village girls, if they were virgins, and torture them. She would shove needles under their fingers, or fingernails, I'm sorry, and make them pull them out themselves. She would take them outside when it was absolute way, way freezing and pour cold water on them and watch them freeze to death. Then she got a little more ingenious. One day she slapped a servant and a little blood spatter ended up on her hand. And when she wiped it off, she felt like the skin on that hand looked healthier and younger. So she had a very close butler to her, and she also had a assistant that was a witch that was also her lover. Well, they began to drain the girls of their blood and put it in a bathtub, and Elizabeth would bathe in it, thinking that that would retain her beauty and her youth. So, over time, over 600 young girls came up missing from the nearby villages. She lived in a castle in Katish. They would be put in iron maidens and drained. They would be given all kinds of cuts and drained. They would be hung upside down and drained. Whatever they had to do to get the blood out, they would do. And then afterwards, the slave and the witch, would get rid of the bodies for her. Well, it turns out that they would throw the bodies in a pit right there in the castle. So when they finally came calling for her, it's kind of hard to avoid the smell, and she was busted. Since she had such high connections, she was simply walled up in her castle in a room that only had one little slit left open for her food to be passed through. And she lived there for another 20 years. Now here's the thing I think a lot of people don't stop and think about. She had 20 years worth of crap in that room with her, okay? That would be that would be a terrible punishment, but an easy punishment considering what she did. They say when she finally died 20 years later that she still looked as young and as beautiful as she had 20 years before. Also, Erzabet was quite the fan of torture. She would use iron pokers, iron brands, scissors. See what else? I mean, every atrocity that could be performed and claimed it was all discipline when it was all just torture because she got off on it. That was her whole point. So anyway, that's the story of Erzabet Bathory. Okay, now she had a kinfolk, because you got to remember she was a European aristocrat from way on high. Her brother was the king of Poland. So her kinman was Gilderay or Gidura. And we're going to talk more about him next time. He was even more horrific. I don't think his victim count was quite as high, but as far as what he did, it's absolutely stomach turning. And people have forgotten that this happened and that these people existed. Well, not only did they exist, but they ruled Europe. So, Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this installment on these serial killers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click that subscribe button. Please give this video a thumbs up. That helps my channel to grow. And you guys have a great night.